Hello, welcome to Boxing Profiles. I'm back at you guys. Hey guys, hey, something I just heard right now, so I had to come on and do a basically a show about it, and it is about again, it's a little bit about Terrence Crawford and Keith Thurman. So I'm gonna bring you guys some news. Without further ado, I'm a heel from Blue Blood Sports. I want you guys to hear this real quick. I talked about this in some of my other podcasts, and people was telling me that I didn't know what I was talking about, and all this other stuff, saying all kinds of nasty things to me. Well, now here it is, and it's coming to the light about the money side of it, and um, um, Crawford's numbers are not that great. And again, we have other podcasters talking about this whole thing. This just confirms, what I was saying. And it's just like thank goodness that it did come out, because now reality is starting to set in for a lot of people. And this is nothing bad about either of the fighters. It's just that one fighter has better numbers than the other, and that's why he's the A side and the other one is the B side. This is why, and it's not nothing that I did, and it's not nothing that the A side did. It just falls on the B side fighter for him to get his numbers up. I said it earlier in one of my videos that you can only get what you're worth. Okay? I said it before. If you're a businessman and you understand business, when you go to a bank, you have to show them your financial records. Your financial records is how your business is doing. When it comes to boxing, your pay-per-view events is your financial records. And with that being said, you have to have a certain amount of financial records to get X amount of dollars up here. You can't expect to get X amount of dollars up here and your financials are down here. It just doesn't work like that, because no one who's giving out money is going to take less money. Even Bob Arum himself said that he lost a lot of money on the B side fighter. So, all I'm going to say is this: it's starting to come out. Now people can see it, and I hope reality is setting in for a lot of people. And this is why the numbers seem lopsided to some people. Some people say it's still bullcrap and it should be a 50-50 fight. Man, there's a lot involved in it that you guys don't know about. And look, this is maybe only way that this fight could work. If we want to see a fight like this, is the only thing that may work. And if they don't agree to this, then there will be no fight, period. Because they're already preparing for the next man in line, who is Keith Thurman. Okay, so I'm gonna play this real quick for you guys. I'm gonna share my screen with you one more time, because love doing this, because I want you to hear from other people that all of us are saying the same thing. So here we go.
Rare against undefeated, unified three belt WBC, WBA, IBF welterweight world champion, superstar boxer, Earl the True Spence Jr., who is widely considered by many to be top two, if not, some would argue the number one best pound for pound fighter in the world. Errol Spence is 28 wins, no losses, no draws, 22 big wins by way of knockout. He is 32 years of age, 5'9" and a half with a 72-inch arm reach. With that said, Team Crawford, they come out and they say, why can Terrence Crawford receive a 50-50 split deal with Errol Spence Jr.? And that's holding up the negotiations, right? Because the money that Terrence Crawford is looking for. So the money that Terrence Crawford is looking for, according to Team Crawford, and I say Team Crawford respectfully, because Terrence Crawford is not a big talker in the public. He doesn't do a lot of interviews, and he co-signs his team, right? He allows them to speak for him, right? And so with that said, Team Crawford, they're saying, why can't we get a 50-50 split deal with Errol Spence Jr., right? And this is a part of holding up the negotiation. Now we had legendary Hall of Fame, iconic CEO of Top Rank, that being Bob Arum. He came out yesterday, well, a few days ago, and he spoke about this big fight between Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence. Will it happen? What's holding it up? And Bob Arum, he stated that the piracy within the sport of boxing from the fans is holding up the Terrence Crawford Errol Spence fight, and that too many fans are illegally streaming these fights and taking the fights, and so the money is not there to pay the massive purses, okay? And so because the money is not there to pay the massive purses, you know, then the fight is being held up because the fighters want massive amounts of money to stage the fight, right? And so, with that said, Bob Arum says he don't believe the fight is going to happen. So now we have Team Crawford come out and they say, why can't they receive a 50-50 split for the Errol Spence fight? Well, there's multiple reasons why you should get a 50-50 split, but then there's multiple reasons as to why you shouldn't get a 50-50 split, right? And I know people are going to say, well, why are the fans and the media and the boxing pundits concerned with the splits? Well, because it's always been a part of the sport of boxing and it's always been publicized. The difference is you have social media today where teams are coming out and they're discussing splits. Now you have Team Crawford saying, why can't they receive a 50-50 split? They should be able to receive a 50-50 split. So they publicize it, right? And so with that said, when you look at the numbers, okay, historically the sport of boxing has been negotiated in the public somewhat, period. Whether it was the situation with Aaron Pryor and Sugar Ray Leonard that never came to fruition, and there was different reports as to why the fight didn't happen and splits and money. It's always been publicized. You had Sugar Ray Robinson, legendary, arguably the GOAT in the sport of boxing, who used to, publicly make it known that when he gets to fights, he wait till he gets to the arena to, negotiate his contract to see just how many people is in the arena, right? So this is nothing new under the sun. But when you have fans that just aren't happy with the fight not coming to fruition, and they just start to say things like, "Oh, nobody should be concerned with the splits and the money." Well, it's a part of the sport of boxing. It's a part of all sports. We know every athlete's contract is publicly being talked about on every sports platform. Okay, you turn on ESPN, just about every how much amount of money every NFL, NBA, NHL, and Major League Baseball player makes. Why? Because they're part of the sport, right? And you have these major platforms talking about the splits and the monies. That's why. And so when it comes to this situation, right? Now you have a situation where the reality is Terrence Crawford can ask for what he wants. Period. Right? Because Terrence Crawford is, a well-decorated, accomplished boxer, and he's considered the best fighter in the world. So yeah, Terrence Crawford can make a case to get a 50-50 split. But at the same time, Errol Spence can make a case not to give him a 50-50 split. So they could be at a crossroads, and people are going to blame Errol Spence because they want Errol Spence to, take less money. Errol Spence is holding up the fight. Errol Spence should, give Terrence Crawford 50-50, but they will not tell you that Terrence Crawford should just go ahead and take a less split. Right? As Terrence Crawford in his own words stated when he did an interview, if it was up to him, he would take a less split, to make the fight happen because he's confident in his abilities. This is what Terrence Crawford himself stated. He stated that he's confident in his abilities. He's confident he's going to win the fight. And so if it was up to him, he would take a less split, right? Just to make the fight happen because he knows he's going to win the fight is what Terrence Crawford said, right? This is Terrence Crawford in his own words. He stated, if it was up to me, I'd take a less split, right? Well, we know based off of the numbers don't lie, they tell the truth, okay? So based off of the numbers, we know by going by the numbers that Terrence Crawford is not a bigger draw than Errol Spence Jr. He's just not, okay? Based off the numbers, and you look at the numbers and you look at the facts, he's not a bigger draw than Errol Spence Jr. He's just not, okay? It's not a knock on Terrence Crawford, his abilities and, his talent. It's just the truth, okay? And so with that said, Terrence Crawford, again, in his own words, right? He stated, if it was up to him and he was in the position of Errol Spence, he was in a position of power, essentially letting the world know that, Errol Spence is the bigger draw, right? And he stated that, he would you know, give up the split, right? He would allow, you know, uh, uh, he would allow Errol Spence to have the biggest split, or he would take less than a 50-50 split, and he would just make the fight happen. This is Terrence Crawford in his own words saying this exact thing. Okay, and so when you say stuff like that, okay, people are going to hold you accountable, right? And then when you look at the actual numbers, when you look at the numbers, okay, um, Errol Spence has done bigger numbers, period, right? When you look at the numbers, right? You say, okay, well, Terrence Crawford, he did a pay per view, and on his pay per view, he did his first pay per view 50,000 pay per views with Victor Postal. Then he did a reported 150,000 pay per views with Amir Khan. Then he did 150,000 pay per views reportedly or less with Sean Porter. Okay, so that's 350,000 pay per views in total. In total, right? 150 plus 50 is 200. Then 150 with Sean Porter. That's 350. Errol Spence did 350,000 pay-per-views with Mikey Garcia alone. That's just one fight. So his one fight with Mikey Garcia, he did as many pay-per-views, he sold as many pay-per-views as Terrence Crawford did with 3 fights. And we know he's done a pay-per-view after that with Sean Porter, a pay-per-view after that with Danny Garcia, and a pay-per-view after that with Yadena Subas. So he had 3 other pay-per-views after that fight.
Looking for royalty free music? Discover Epidemic Sound. Get the safest music subscription.
And he sold out a bigger arena. Um he sold out AT&T Dallas Cowboys Stadium in Arlington, Texas. And he had 40,000 people in the arena. Okay, so when you look at it from that standpoint, right? It's just not an argument. It's just not. Okay, and the thing is, uh, you cannot knock Terrence Crawford for wanting to get a 50-50 split. How could you knock him? Right? You can't knock him for wanting the big money. Who can tell you what his value is? Nobody. Only he can tell you that, right? And who can argue his value? Nobody, right? You can't knock it. You can't tell him what his value is. You can't do any of those things, right? But the numbers just don't lie. It's simple. The numbers tell the truth. And so, because the numbers are telling you that Errol Spence is doing the bigger numbers, or Errol Spence, he has, a case where he could just listen. I want this, and the numbers are telling me I should get this. So he can make a case to say, this is why I'm not giving you 50-50. As well as Terrence Crawford can make an argument, I'm accomplished, I'm well established, this is the biggest fight in the sport of boxing. I'm 50% of the biggest 50% of the biggest fight in the sport of boxing, so I deserve it, right? But listen to what Terrence Crawford had to say when he did this interview, and he talked about the split, right? You can't say stuff like and then say why shouldn't I get it?
He's protecting himself, protecting his record, protecting that zero. And
you have to stand on your square.
What type of higher you are?
Period.
A little bit. That has something to do with it a little bit, but at the same time, I just think like, thinking the big picture. Like, if I take a chance like this, I need to be getting paid as much money as possible. Just in case if I lose. He's talking about he want to fight this guy, so he's going to be the A side, He don't want a 50-50 fight. Well, that just lets you know right now he's not 100% confident in his own ability. He can say what he wants. The casual fans can say what they want. But me, if I'm confident in my abilities, I'm like, okay, we can do it. It don't matter if it's 50-50 or not. I know I'm going to win, so I don't have nothing to lose.
You think? Listen what he said.
What they want. But me, if I'm confident in my abilities, I'm like, okay, we can do it. It don't matter if it's 50-50 or not. I know I'm going to win, so I don't have nothing to lose.
Right there, you have it. I don't care if it's 50-50 or not. I know I'm going to win, and I'm confident, so I know I'm not going to lose. So I'll take less money. Well, there you have it.
Okay, folks. There you go. You heard it right there. Okay. That's why I like to play these videos so you don't just see that I'm saying something. You heard it from Terrence Crawford himself saying that he would be willing to take less money just to make the fight. But yet and still, Team Crawford is asking for more money. But like I said earlier in my earlier video, there's nothing wrong with asking for more money. The question is, how are the people on the business side of this looking at it? Are the people on the business side of it looking at it and say, let's look at your financials. Let's see how well you are doing in your business. That's more than likely almost 85 to 95% accurate is what these guys are going to do as far as when it comes to the money aspect of this. That's what they're looking at, and that's going to be looking at their pay-per-view numbers is what they're looking at. Okay, that's what they mean by the A side and the B side. And as you can see, you heard it. You heard it from Blue Blood Sports right there. Okay, you also heard it from Fanon earlier in an earlier podcast that I did. Was that the numbers are completely lopsided. Earl Spencer's way up here, and Crawford's numbers is low. I mean, again, that's not Spencer's fault. Okay, you understand what I'm saying? So I'm not trying to favor any fighter. I'm trying to stay neutral with this whole thing, but the numbers do not lie, okay? And most business people are looking at the numbers before they go ahead and put out X amount of dollars because, number one, they have to make a profit on this also. They're not going to take a cut in their profit just to pay Terrence Crawford. I know a lot of people say the networks have a lot of money and have this and have that. Okay. All right. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. We don't know what the budget is for a fight like this is. Whoever's putting up the money. We don't know what the budget is for this. Okay? There's got to be a certain amount of money that is allocated to get everything done. And they may not be able to put in more money unless another investor comes out of nowhere and pays the money. Okay? We don't know who the investors are because Showtime is made up of probably a whole bunch of different investors, and you don't know who's putting money in and who's not putting money in. So we don't even have a clue on that part. Okay? All right. So the bottom line to it is, again, if things don't pan out with Terrence Crawford, Keith Thurman is already looking to jump into that spot. Okay? That is what he's doing. And you know, if Crawford, I guess I don't know how long this negotiations are gonna go, but it you know, when you start hearing stuff like this, I would think that the negotiations is probably gonna start winding down here pretty soon, and they're gonna say, dude, this just ain't gonna work. Then that means Bob Arum was completely right about the Spence and the Crawford fight. That's why he didn't get the fight with he didn't make the fight with the Terrence Crawford, because it's been more really difficult because there's guaranteed money that has to be paid. Okay. And again, business people are not going to take a loss on anything. So, especially when you do not control the money. If you do not control the money, we are subject to the people that control the money. And that's facts. You are subject to your boss when you go to work. If you don't show up to work, you don't get paid. Some of you do, because some of you got really good jobs, and then some people don't. The average person don't get paid if he don't go to work, unless he got sick time or vacation and he used something like that. But at some point, you still lose something, okay? And that is my whole point when it comes to the business side of it, of this, okay? So this is where we're at right now, and this is why the fight has not been made, period. And I'm starting to lean towards that this fight is not going to even be made, and it's just going to vaporize in the air. And people are going to still talk about it, but it's nothing to talk about it if the two fighters can't get together. The same thing with the Floyd Mayweather and the Manny Pacquiao fight. Look at what happened. It took them so long to get them together. And when they finally got together, the fight itself wasn't that exciting. Okay? It was not that exciting, although the pay-per-view numbers was off the chart. But it wasn't that exciting. You know, I didn't find it to be that exciting. It was more one fighter dominated the other fighter, and then everybody was saying, oh, no, this fighter won, that fighter won. I don't know what fight you guys was watching when it come to that, but I could just say bottom line to it is this. The truth is the truth. That and that's all we can do. The truth is the truth. That's it. All right. So it looks like probably Keith Thurman is probably getting ready to jump up there and step into this spot because of this just not looking good. This is not looking good. Negotiations is not going so well. But the fact that Terrence Crawford he said this in an interview that he is willing to take less money, and now his team is asking for more money. I guess that's all part of negotiations. Let's see if they hold him accountable of and use Crawford's words against him. Let's see if that's what's going to happen. I know again some of you fans still think it should be a 50-50 fight because Terrence Crawford is made up of 50% of the fight, and so is Errol Spence. I know that's the politics of boxing. It's not, I mean, that's all you can do. I remember my first fight. When I fought for $500. $500. Now think about that for a moment. $500, my first fight. Had to pay my trainer, my manager, okay? And I didn't have a cut man in the corner at that particular time. And, thank God I didn't get any cuts or anything, because if I did, my trainer actually technically was a cut man, and then he had to use his skills, so then I would have to pay him for that also. So you think about that for a moment, okay? That money gets splits up, and then they get a percentage of that $500. So, just think about that for a moment. After I paid him out, I didn't walk away with a whole lot of money at all. That's what I'm saying. But these guys are in the big time. They're making millions of dollars. So the bottom line to it is, when you start looking at the numbers and all the people that's got to be paid, it does make sense that you have an A side and you have a B side. Now, it doesn't matter who that is, okay? But they're gonna go off of who can bring in. Let me put this in a easier term where you guys can understand it. Who could put the asses in the seats? That's what they're gonna go by. That's what they're gonna go by. Because in Las Vegas, boxing is huge in Las Vegas. However, who is gonna put the asses in the seats? Okay. Now, here's the other thing that people talk about. Okay, we know that Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence is the main event. But think about this. You got a co-main event. What happens is they have another big name fighter on the co-main event. How many asses in the seats that he gets credit for? Not just Spence and Crawford. See, there's a lot more that goes into this than people talk about and what they know about. But everybody wants to say, no, it should be a 50-50 fight. But the undercard fights, if those fighters are big name fighters also, then they're putting asses in the seats too. So that takes away from it also. You can't just give all the credit to Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford. You cannot do that when you have other people that's on that card, other big names. Now, I know usually promoters try not to do that. But then again, hey, if you're going to do a major pay-per-view like this, it would make sense for you to put big name fighters on the card. Why? Because, number one, boxing is getting his butt kicked by MMA because MMA is on national television and they can watch it for free. That's number one. Number two, okay, if you have other big name people on the card that can attract bigger crowds, you'll probably sell a lot more pay-per-views. Yes, would the money go up? Absolutely. But then again, they still got purses that they have to pay, okay? That doesn't mean that they could give this one fighter, because he got all these accomplishments over here, give him most of the money. It doesn't work like that, folks. Not at all, okay? Every fighter has to have financial records. I didn't make the rule. They did. I'm just saying I understand it. That's all I'm saying is I understand it, and it makes sense because the numbers do not lie. You heard it from Fanon. You heard it from Blue Blood Sports. Do you want me to? I could bring somebody else in and you can hear it from them too. The numbers do not lie. You have to have, let me use simpler terms. You have to be able to put asses in the seat. That's it. Let's say you have the Earl Spence fight with Terrence Crawford, and then you also have Tank Davis on the card. Tank and Ryan Garcia. Let's just say something like that. You got 4 big name fighters on there now. Will people pay for that main event? Absolutely. The numbers will be outrageous. Why? And I'll tell you why. Because, okay, the Latino community is probably the biggest community when it comes to boxing. They're probably the biggest community, the Latino community. Okay? Yes, when one of their fighters fight, they support their fighters 100%. Okay? When Canelo fights, look at how many people. Why do you think Canelo fills arenas out? Because that's his people that's there. They support their own people. That's why. Okay? We could take a lesson from some of the things that they're doing that we could learn. We need to support our fighters. I said it before. Okay, if you could buy the pay-per-view, buy the pay-per-view. Support our fighters so that they can make the big money. They're going to give us a show that we haven't seen in almost 40-something years. And remember, somebody could get seriously hurt. Careers can be ended. Somebody, I'm not wishing none of this to happen, somebody could pass away. It's had happened before in fights. Okay? Look at the Meldrick Taylor, Julio Cesar Chavez. Neither of those fighters were the same after that fight. Now, everybody said that Julio Cesar Chavez was punishing Meldrick Taylor. But you guys look at this, okay? Julio Cesar Chavez was throwing less punches, but he was hitting them with very, very deliberate and hard shots. But both fighters went to the hospital with all kinds of fractures in their faces and everything else. So did Taylor put just as much of a beating on Chavez as Chavez did to Taylor? Yeah, according to the hospital records, yes, he did. But leave it to the fans. The fans will say, no, he didn't. He didn't. But again, you only see one side of the coin. You have to look at the whole picture. Neither fighter was the same after that fight. Period. They left a piece of themselves inside of that ring. And that's what happens to fighters. They leave a little piece of themselves inside of the ring every time they step into the ring. Okay? Again, I'm a former fighter. I know what's happening inside of the ring, outside of the ring. Okay? So when I hear people say nonsense, okay, I'm going to have to give you guys a big time yes, I'm going to have to give you a big time flush that shit. Okay? Because some of the things you said, like I say before, is just plain stupid. Okay? And one of the guys that I love and I miss very, very much, he said this to most of you guys out there.
Can you tell me the origin of your phrase, you don't know shit about boxing, is infamous?
Everybody know. Most motherfuckers don't know shit about boxing anyway.
What do you...
There you go. Roger Mayweather. He tell you straight up. Just straight up. Just the way it is. Okay? So, you know, with all that being said, the bottom line to it is there's an A side, there's a B side, and then there is a business side that determines who is the A and who is the B. We may not like it, but that's how it is because the numbers do not lie. Okay? Regardless of your achievements, the numbers do not lie. Period. That's all I got. All right, guys. You guys have a great one. Keep punching. Don't get punch drunk. Peace. I'm out. Catch you in a minute.